all the signs are like Ikra Khalid, my favorite person. If you were around at that time when I wrote about her and her little suspicious actions.
Oh yeah, this was after you got blamed for Pizzagate, right?
Yes.
Hello, I am Allan Ruhl from allanruhl.com. I am joined today by the one and only Stefanie Nicholas, she writes for 1 Peter 5 and Catholic Family News. She spoke at the Fatima conference recently. She has been on the front page of the Toronto Star when she was blamed for the Pizzagate shootings. And for all those south of the border, the Toronto Star is, equivalent to the New York Times in Canada. So, and Stephanie was on the front page. And so, she joins me today. How are you, Stephanie?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, and for letting everybody know my best claim to fame, which is the false accusation of me causing a mass shooting.
Oh, okay.
That's what we always focus on.
Well, I did say it was false. No, did I?
Yes, it's true. Honestly, I just, I feel like it's good to lead with these things because this is the level of, this is what they do to you folks if you step out of the line. Just saying.
Okay. Now, Stephanie, take a couple minutes and tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, how you came to faith, etc.
Okay, to give the short version, if possible, because my conversion story was long enough to be a talk at the aforementioned Fatima Center Conference. But I am from Ontario, Canada. I am a mom to a almost 4-year-old little boy. I come from a Eastern Orthodox background, actually. In my childhood and up to my teen years, I was attending Orthodox Divine Liturgy every Sunday. In my teen years, I kind of turned towards non-denominational Protestantism. Eventually kind of ended up leaving Christianity altogether, exploring all these different things. And then several years later, in my mid-20s, I, through a lot of providential experiences, kind of decided to explore the one religion I hadn't explored, which was Catholicism. And I converted in the spring of 2018, and my son was baptized. So, very short version.
And just for the record, I'm going to be putting a link to your conversion video in the at the Fatima Center at the conference, so everyone can go see it. I recommend you see it. It's a powerful testimony.
Thank you.
A great story of God's grace and how He's looking out for all of us. So,
thanks be to God.
Now,
remembering there's a purpose for Him bringing me here, right?
Amen.
In these crazy times.
So, recently in the church, we've had what is called the Amazon Synod. And the Amazon Synod was a synod that took place in the church from October 6th to October 27th. It produced a final document. I've got it over there. And it's a controversial document. I just want to get some of your thoughts on this document, Stephanie. On this whole synod, actually, specifically.
Well, I can't believe it was only 20 days, first of all. It felt like just this chaos was going on for so long. I'm like, oh, it's finally over.
Just imagine being alive. Imagine being alive during Vatican II, where it's 3 years.
I know. Can you imagine just this coming out? But I mean, I guess people are very excited, and I mean, this synod has just been one train wreck after another. I think that I don't know. I guess my kind of takeaway on all this is just how if there was any doubt about the I don't know, the kind of direction that Francis wants to take the church, right? About his the idea that he's just being misunderstood at this point. I think with the Synod, I think so many people have kind of, disabused themselves of that idea. Not necessarily because of the document itself. All he's saying is let's take this women deacons back to that same commission from 2016 when they studied this, and whatever year it was they studied it the first time, 2004, what have you. Not just because of that, but just these actions that have been taking place in the Vatican, to me, shows just it's something I've been grappling with lately myself, just looking at this, just being like, Holy Father, why do you have such contempt for the simple and the poor faithful who, are looking to you and what you're doing, and their faith is being damaged by seeing this pagan idol worship, in the Vatican City. It's really quite incredible.
And for those who don't know, she's referring to the Pachamama statue.
Pachamama!
That was placed in the Vatican garden, and they bowed down to it. Now, apparently, the Pope didn't bow down. Apparently, he just said in Our Father and left. But
that's something.
But silence, he was essentially consenting to it. He hasn't condemned the Pachamama bowing down to in prostration. He hasn't condemned that. I mean, sure, if something happened and he was not anticipating that, okay, but you condemn it later on. He hasn't condemned it. And of course, the best part of this whole synod, the part which put a smile on my face, is when some guy, apparently there's some Catholics left in Rome, some guy takes those Pachamama things and chucks them in the Tiber, and I'm like, yes!
That was a joyful moment, I think, in a lot of ways, because it really, represented something real. And, like you're saying about Francis, whether or not he does it or he doesn't, I'm at the point where I'm just so tired of trying to guess at his kind of personal dispositions about this. What I do know is that his actions, and more often than not, his inaction, says a lot about the direction of the papacy and the way he wants to move the church. And it's upsetting, right? And also, to note on the Pachamama idols, there's this, I think back to when I wasn't Catholic, right? And how easy it was for me to lie about big and little things, that lying was just a part of my daily life. And to me, the amount that these bishops and these kind of, papal defender, liberal-minded kind of Catholics will just lie. It says a lot about where their faith must be at, because first they start off with, it's Our Lady of the Amazon, right? And then you're racist and you're horrible and you're evil for saying that this. Wait a minute, this looks like pagan idol worship in the Vatican. What's going on? And then you have Pope Francis himself using the term Pachamama to describe the idols. I mean, he just admits that it's exactly what all the evil trads or whatever were saying the entire time. And it's upsetting. You just stop with the lies. I guess I can understand, because I used to be a liar myself, but how do you just go and continue to lie about these things? It's really incredible.
Yeah, I'm sure St. Catherine of Siena could have just told everyone everything is fine and dandy, but instead she goes in, she tells the Pope to smarten up and go back to Rome, So that's and people say, well, she was a saint. I'm like, not at the time she wasn't. She was canonized 81 years after she died. So I mean, let's be fair here. I mean, the Pope is not above criticism. Just like Alexander VI, people will. We know his actions. We know he didn't bow down to an idol, but he had at least 8 different kids with 4 different women. Now, and of course, the Catholic Church teaches that priests in the Roman Rite need to be celibate, and obviously he didn't do that. Just like we condemn idol worship.
Yeah, commit fornication and concubinage, anyways. Even if he wasn't a priest, I mean, there's problems.
Yeah, no, that's true. He was
a
very deeply flawed man.
Yes, he was.
Rodrigo Borgia, interesting fella. And that was right on the eve of the Protestant Reformation. Now, it seems like I got this mentality. Like, each time they had people from those countries, they were dressed up in their, like, traditional garb from those countries. And it seems like, how come they didn't call it the South American Synod or the Brazilian Synod? They call it the Amazon, because when we think of Amazon, we think of forests and rivers and all plush.
Yes.
And so it's trying to give us a feeling like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Avatar, but it probably wants us to think like Avatar. You know, that this paradise that's being invaded. And of course, most people in the Amazon live in cities.
Of course.
They live in cities with skyscrapers, with apartment complexes, with city blocks, with litter,
jeans
with
and t-shirts,
parks,
yeah.
with people playing
normal
soccer
clothes
and baseball, and people doing this and that, people living their lives. And no, it's got to be this. Each time they showed a picture, they would just, kind of like a drone shot, just hovering over forests without end. I'm like, no, it's not the Na'vi. It's like the people are the Na'vi from Avatar. It's Avatar.
Avatar Synod. That's really
the
a good way to
Avatar
put it.
Synod. That's what we're renaming the Synod. The Avatar
Yeah,
Synod.
it's true. That's a great point though, because it's very manipulative, right? It allows these because still somehow even in current year, people just cannot get over their fear of being culturally insensitive or racist or against the earth or whatever, right? Because it just opens you up to being called all these horrible names. And because as soon as you say this, right, you say, well, wait a minute, these people are, I even was confused about some of this stuff at the beginning. I'm like, I don't even know who the people are they're supposed to be speaking for, where are they coming from, what is this, because they're trying to paint the kind of the whole angle of, well, we need to get these married priests out here because there aren't enough priests and they don't have the sacraments, and so it's just this whole thing of this kind of like mystical land in the jungle where a priest is, coming in carrying his altar on his back, and it's not reality. It's very manipulative.
The thing is, I heard one person, I think it was J.D. Flynn, he was the only guy who brought this up, and he's not us. He's not a leftist, but he's not us. He's kind of a centrist.
No, he's not a Rajra, that's for sure.
Yeah,
like me.
And he said that, look, it's irresponsible, and this is what I was saying, it is technically, on paper, the celibate priesthood could change. I don't think it will, and it certainly shouldn't, but it technically could, because it's not a doctrine, it's a practice. However, it is irresponsible to ordain someone who hasn't been to seminary, who hasn't learned. That is such a danger to the people.
I saw that thread, I believe, as well from him.
I mean, it's keep in mind, it's dangerous to have people like Bishop Erwin Krautler there. He's been destroying their faith probably more than anything else with his modernism. And what's the antidote to that? More modernism,
Of course, yes. Modernism doesn't work, double O.
Let me tell you something about priestly vocations. In the last 2 years, I attend a Fraternity of St. Peter parish. That's a traditional order in the Catholic Church. The diocese of my city has ordained one priest in the last 2 years, in the entire diocese. In my church, where you have to go to a separate seminary, we have had 2 people from our church ordained. One this year, one last year. And we have people from one parish versus 50 or 60 or 70 parishes in the whole diocese. And we have 2 more in the seminary that are going to be ordained in upcoming years. Tradition inspires vocations. I never heard anyone say,
of course,
hey, let's get more Latin Mass exposure there, more tradition there to get those vocations up.
Well, that is what because some of these things, right? This is always going to be a discussion, when you're bringing up the kind of the crisis or the post Vatican II era, whatever. People are always going to point to, well, you can't exactly look at the statistics on this. Correlation isn't causation. And you can look at Michael Davies' liturgical time bombs in Vatican II, where he just goes through all the numbers of all the collapse and whatever. And it's just like, these people, the presumption is just that their way, their modern way of doing things, their, modern way of saying the Mass, their modern way of using the vernacular, their modern way of having girl altar boys and all this such nonsense. They just kind of presume their way must work. They don't feel the need to prove that their numbers work. Yet when it comes to tradition, we have to have an unimpeachable statistical case that it works. And I would say statistics like yours don't surprise me at all, because they happen everywhere. I think per capita, how many vocations are coming out of tradition? I'd like to see that number. Well, it wouldn't be surprising if it's higher.
You talked about how they say that correlation does not equal causation. That is true. That is true, but I will say this: what they're doing is not working, and that is like
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. The presumption is on. Yeah, why is the burden of proof only ever on the 1950 year tradition of the church?
Yeah, no, and
not on the recent version.
There's now let's take a minute to talk specifically about the female deacons. The female deacons, which Bishop Erwin Krautler, the same. Now, keep in mind, he's not from there. He is originally born in Germany. No, sorry, he's born in Austria. But
right.
And he has been in the Amazon destroying the faith of the people for several decades. And he's like, oh, we need women deacons because he made this argument. I pointed this out in an article that I just published, that was published on 1 Peter 5 that
I think I might have seen it then.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, they already run communities. That's the justification. Where there's not a regular priest, they're often, helping the faithful out. It's like, well, if they're doing it, and they're not a deacon, they don't need to be deacons to do it. I mean, that would seem like common sense.
Yeah,
and so they're proposing these things. Of course, I don't know, just give me your thoughts about this female reaction.
Well, my thoughts about female deacons is that it's look, any sort of ordained female deacons will cause a schism because, to put it gracefully in a way that most feminists will love, women are invalid matter for holy orders. You can't be ordained to holy orders as a female. It's not possible. It's ontologically impossible. It's theologically impossible. However, what I think they're going to try and push for first, I'm not even sure if Francis is going to be quite that brazen. I think they're going to push for this kind of pseudo female deacon where they won't be ordained exactly, but they won't fully be deacons, and we're not going to mess the priesthood. But I still think it's all normalizing this, because this is like anything else. This antiquarianism is just a constant problem I see in the church. They'll say, look, in the Bible it talks about the deaconess and da da da. It's like, these things have developed organically. East and West have different traditions on these things for good reasons. And to just, to be so arrogant to think that, the church has just completely gone astray until the year 2019, and we have to now, the Pope has to declare from on high that we suddenly need this, deacon role for women, even if it's not an ordained deaconess or whatever. I find it very antiquarian and very arrogant, frankly.
Have you noticed, Stefanie, like they're saying they're trying to find them in the early church?
Right.
Stuff like that. And then I said to myself, okay, why don't you do that for everything in the early church? Huh? How about the Good Friday prayer and the conversion of Jews?
How
about the Good Friday? That's way earlier in the church than these stupid female.
My thing I always say is when they do this too, and this is because I hammer on this a lot at this point, antiquarianism or archaeologism. Pius XII talked about it, I think, in Mediator Dei.
Oh, yeah.
It's very good.
Encyclical, by the way. Great encyclical.
Yeah, I need to read the whole thing still. I read a really good piece on it by Philip Campbell about this, and that really just changed. That really opened a door for me about last year, looking at how I view tradition, right? And if it's just older and coming from, the Eastern Orthodox tradition, there's this constant appeal to, well, in the early church they did this, and the early church did that. Look, the Catholics have innovated, da da da. And I think it's a dangerous mentality because, as you say, we need to have an external structure that is going to decide what is tradition, what is legitimate development. I mean, the Orthodox, obviously, they concede this too because they too have changed certain things. They don't have my example of bringing this back is always, do you guys want to bring back multiple year-long penances for mortal sins? Do you want to bring back, all these, public penances?
Yeah.
It's just the stuff, they never want that. They just want the fun stuff, the feminist-seeming woke stuff or whatever.
Only things that would appeal to modernism.
Of course.
Yeah, like should we bring back St. John Chrysostom's teaching on the Jews and teach that in the seminaries? No, they don't want that because
no.
They don't care about that.
We wouldn't like that a bit.
Yeah, it's only stuff that
it's really a disdain for tradition. Yeah, it's picking and choosing. And this is not to say that there are never things that can be kind of restored or anything like that. Obviously, that has happened all throughout church history, and there's a legitimacy for that. But I think that, the women deacon thing, it's just the core of it really bothers me, is in the same way that, I recognize that, on some level you could say that, I don't think having girl altar service has destroyed the Catholic faith, obviously.
It's damaged it.
But it's damaged it. It's wrong. And it just, what I'm saying is that there are some of these things that you'll kind of point out, well, this is a discipline, this is that. And the problem is that the point of a discipline is to reflect a doctrine, right? Is to reflect a dogma, right? And it's these disciplines have meaning, right? Same with the celibate priesthood and the Roman Rite. And just when we can kind of think that because technically speaking, it could be, I haven't studied this issue very in depth, but it could be theoretically acceptable to for Pope John Paul II to decide we can have girl altar boys. That doesn't mean it was prudent. It doesn't mean it was a good thing. It doesn't mean that it's, look at what's done to vocations. I really do think that this constant women on the altar nonsense is diminished vocations, because there's nothing unique about the priesthood, and then the altar servers and the minor orders, that should all be leading to that.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. In the States, the Diocese of Denton, Nebraska, is the only diocese in the entire country with no female altar servers. And in that diocese, the average age of a priest is 41. The vocations are coming left, right, and center because there's no stupid altar girls. And this is something else, Stephanie. You know how modernists love Vatican II, right?
Their favorite.
And have you noticed they don't even quote it anymore? They might reference Vatican II because right now,
if they quote it, they find trouble.
Yeah, like for example, they talk about female deacons. I always say, well, why didn't your precious Vatican II give that to you, huh? How come the greatest council in the history of the church didn't give female deacons, didn't give married priests in the Roman Rite? It talks about, of course, there were some bishops trying to abuse it, but this talks about it talks about the male deacons. It talks about male and female laity being involved in catechizing people and missionary work in ad gentes. It does say that. It says nothing about stupid female deacons.
No, not a word.
Yeah.
And this is kind of their shtick as it is, right? You look at the same thing when it comes to the Mass in general. They're quick to cry how everybody's schismatic and disobeying the council and what have you. And it's like you look at it and if you really kind of hammer out which parishes are actually even following Sacrosanctum Concilium, let alone the Novus Ordo, right? They how many of them are being disobedient? I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, look at something as simple as the extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion. How many of them are doing this by any directive ever set out by the Vatican properly?
Yeah, well,
I would say 5%.
They've technically always had extraordinary ministers, but the reason they were called extraordinary is because they were extraordinary. Yes. Like for example, the First World War, you'd have a priest say mass in a trench, and then the extraordinary minister would just run into no man's land and see the dying person and give him one last communion. Of course, the priest couldn't do that because if he did that and he got killed, they couldn't consecrate any more Eucharists. So that's what the extraordinary minister was for. But now, you go to my friend HD, he lives close to a church called St. Albert the Great. He's gone there before. It's in the south of Calgary. And there's like 11 extraordinary ministers. And
I've seen this at really every, except for I think once, not that I don't go to the Novus Ordo anymore, but when I have, it's like when I first started going to Mass and becoming Catholic, that was just the normal thing, and it always made me uncomfortable coming from a Eastern Orthodox background. It's just, no, but that's the thing, and it is disobedient, and there's no concern for no concern for if the use is actually extraordinary, if it's helpful. It's just an excuse for it's ultimately a blurring between, this is the same whole problem we're talking about female deacons. It's just a blurring between the baptismal priesthood and the clerical priesthood. Right? It's just kind of minimizing those essential differences in roles between the priest and the laity.
There's a guy at my church who said the church is clericalizing the laity and laicizing the clergy.
It's a good way to put it. It's really true. It's really what it's like.
Yeah. No. And there's this other fellow at my church said that the Amazon Synod makes Vatican II look like a Thomist conference.
It's true, though. It really is true. This is just what it's unleashed. And at the same time, it's like I do find myself a little bit being frustrated to still see people defending a CC and JP2 on this point, because I'm like, this is kind of just the extreme end of the same kind of rotten seed that's been going for a long time. So it's not entirely fair to just act like this fell out of the sky with Francis. On the other hand, in terms of Francis himself, I can understand why people have an innate kind of suspicion in a way they probably didn't with John Paul II, which is understandable.
I mean, Pope John Paul II, like you said, he has numerous faults. Kissing the Quran, Assisi, Father Maciel, the priestly abuse. He has many, 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 many faults that I would not overlook. However, at the same time,
Francis to the cardinal, raising Francis to the cardinals.
Yeah, that's a mistake. Let me tell you. But, and including all the, both him and Pope Benedict technically made all the cardinals that had elected Francis.
Oh yeah, Benedict too.
Yeah, so Pope John Paul II did all those bad things, but he did a few good things. He was charismatic. He brought in so many Protestants in the States. Under John Paul II, you had Scott Hahn, Jeff Cavins, Tim Staples, like tons of people come in. Like, yes, the bad stuff, but at least there's some good stuff. Who does Pope Francis kind of attract? The only people he seems to be attracting are Greta Thunberg, George Soros, and Jeffrey Sachs. All these environmentalists and eugenists and globalists.
He literally only appeals to the worst of Protestantism, the worst of the secular world. Because like you said, you're getting under JP2 these really solid. Scott Hahns of the world, right? And from that kind of end of Protestantism, which of course people, this is my constant thing of just the entire kind of post-conciliar experiment. This is always what I kind of get frustrated with. It's just the constant tendency to, we have completely destroyed hope of the return of the Orthodox in a lot of ways, unless we consecrate Russia, be back with Mary, by our liturgical insanity, by desacralizing the liturgy in general. We did that to appeal to Protestants. And now, you see the fruit of that. The ultimate outcome is that we have chased away all of the Protestants who are truly seeking Christ in favor of, like you said, Greta Thunberg and George Soros and whatever various communists and leftists you can drag out of, nominal Christianity found in the United States.
And the thing is,
in Canada,
they're not even converting. It's not like Greta Thunberg.
Oh, that too, yeah.
It's not like Greta Thunberg's in RCIA. If
she was, what was she learning? Who knows?
Yeah, that's true. The Catholic Church, think the things that are attractive, people who study church history usually convert. People who they're like, I think when a Protestant would sit down with a knowledgeable Catholic, they would be guided toward the church. But this Pope, I mean, he was not prepared to be Pope. He's not attracting anyone. He's not attracting anyone. Like, I don't think, like, for example, Pope, the reason Poland, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that Poland is so Catholic, like, I don't know if you've ever been to Poland, but it is, like, you go there, it is like, it's like more Catholic than Rome. It's
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's more Catholic than Rome. I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah, that's true. With the exception of Pachamama being thrown in the Tiber, that was
the best, the most Roman, true Catholic moment. Yeah, I mean, it's
whoever that was. God bless you. You know.
No, God bless you. I know. I've been praying for you.
But
Great fellows.
But a lot of the reason why there's high vocations in Poland and stuff like that, and is because of John Paul, not exclusively, but
sure.
I mean, what's been going on with the church in Argentina since Francis has been elected? You know, I don't think it's any better. I mean,
no, of course not. Well,
like it seems like Pope Francis has all of JP2 and Benedict's bad qualities, but none of their good ones. That's just.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, and
I think that. Well, see, that's.
Well, I
It's kind of.
just to wrap this part up on the Amazon Synod. I mean, I think at this point in the church's life, like, for example, the last 20 years, countries in the West, Western Europe, North America, Central America, South America, a lot of those countries, Catholic, a few Protestant ones, have all adopted homosexual quote-unquote marriage. How come in the last 20 years there hasn't been an encyclical against homosexuality? And Pope Francis is not the only one to blame for this. We got to blame JP and Pope Benedict. But where has it been? Where has it been? I mean, does that not seem like a
JP2? I mean, yeah, at least, like, you know, this is the thing that I think is a great benefit of coming into, you know, sometimes I look around at this church and I think to myself, God, what is your purpose of bringing me now? You know, what do you want with me here? Because I feel sometimes, you know, helpless to stand against the craziness that surrounds all of us every day. But the great benefit to that is that I didn't have this sentiment. I've heard people kind of talk about this kind of sentimentality, especially surrounding Pope John Paul II, but also Benedict, among a lot of traditionally minded people in my circles, that there's this kind of emotional attachment to these popes that is really clouded, and people are offended. Especially John Paul II now being, you know, a canonized saint. It's very hard for people to say you're going to attack a saint. You're going to this, that, and the other. Where I have only been in the church under Francis. And I can kind of look back on this, you know, this JP2 era and the Benedict era of the church and look and go, hey, you know, here's one main difference I see from you fellows versus Francis is that I think you guys both evidence actual faith in God. I think that you both clearly show you believe in and love God. So I can at least understand that there is a level of, I do believe in many things we can say about John Paul II, especially is that it was a lot, I can... You know, I think there's a lot of, I don't know whether to call it ignorance or naivety, but I don't really see much where I would attribute malice. And with Francis, I just, it's hard for me to not see it just based on his own actions and inaction. That's a very sad thing to say as a Catholic. And it's just my useless opinion as a little convert woman. What do I know?
Question for you, Stefanie. We talked about the Amazon Synod. Oh, there's a crisis in the Amazon. There's an ecological crisis, a priesthood shortage.
Ecological sins, yeah.
Therefore, the Pope calls a 3-week synod, calls in bishops all over the globe to discuss this. Now, when Pope Francis literally changes the teaching on the death penalty overnight, he just changed it. He just published a I think it was a motu proprio. He's like, oh, yeah, the Catechism now says this, which technically doesn't change the doctrine because the Catechism can have errors. But regardless, that it says this. And that was just done by himself. He didn't call... You think that would be something that he would call a synod over. Why do you think, Stefanie, he didn't call a synod for that, but he's calling a synod for a crisis in one region?
Well, I mean, I can't claim to, know his motives necessarily, but my kind of thinking on this immediately when I saw this happen, when was this, about a year ago at this point? Has it been that long? I was trying to think back to my own...
I want to say...
What I was thinking at the time.
I want to say it was May 2018. I'm pretty sure
it was definitely in 2018. It had to have been later than May, because I think I've been Catholic for a little while, but I remember thinking that yeah, you might be right. But I just remember at the time kind of realizing, first of all, this crisis as somebody who wants to evangelize, first of all, and this was when I'd be talking to Protestants, and then they're saying, well, your Pope can just go and change the church, right? And I was saying, well, that's a... But my immediate thought on this was that, this is an odd thing to do. Nobody really, the death penalty is not an issue that really affects the lives of everyday people very much, really, just kind of numerically speaking. This isn't an issue that many people really care about. And I immediately saw it and I thought, this strikes me as a test balloon. This strikes me as just something he's doing to see if people will take it. And I think that might be the reason that he chose the kind of act unilaterally and just changing the catechism. If you say, can I get people to accept literally by the stroke of a pen, it's basically like what they did with the Roman Missal, right? Like, what if we just, kind of scratch these things out? Let's change this stuff around here and see if people go for it, right? And that's basically what he did. And I wonder if that is the reason that instead of calling a synod, that he just kind of did it in this kind of shady way, knowing and kind of seeing how Catholics do not realize that the Catechism of the Catholic Church is not always an infallible document. No. This came out and I realized, oh my word, people genuinely, and I learned this very early on as a Catholic, for the simple reason that when I opened my John Paul II 1994 or 1997 revision, whatever, catechism, and it told me that Muslims worship the same God as Catholics, I was very troubled by that as a new convert, and I decided I had to look more, and at the very least, it got me to kind of research catechisms and see that it's not as cut and dry as this is a compendium of perfect infallible teaching.
Yeah,
so I don't know. What's your read on that? That's the closest guess I have to his possible reason.
I don't know. I've got a theory.
I don't know.
But it may not fly. I'll share this with you, and I kind of ran this by in the article. Because Francis is a leftist, right? We know that. But there's some leftist causes I don't think he cares about. Like this female ordination, I don't believe he cares about.
Like the death penalty.
He cares about the death penalty, he cares about the environment, and he cares about migrants, aka refugees and open borders. Those are his three causes he cares about. For things like female ordination, he doesn't really care about it. He doesn't care about homosexuality either, but he believes in freedom of speech. He believes that everyone should get to share it. So you got people like this piece of garbage, Erwin Krautler. You got Phyllis Zagano, who threatened to sue me over Twitter, by the way.
Classic.
Yeah, she's like the biggest promoter of female deacons in the world. And she threatened to sue me over Twitter. And
hi, Phyllis.
Hi. I'm still here. And it's kind of like, it might be hard to sue me since I live in a different country than you, but anyway.
And you're not doing anything against the law in any way.
Yeah, I called her a crackpot. That's all I did.
Oh man, if I could only sue all the people who call me crackpot or whatever.
And then she's like,
anyways,
put me in contact with your lawyer and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm Canadian, But, and so you've got people like James Martin promoting homosexuality and all this stuff. And I don't, like Francis is a big believer, in my opinion, of freedom of speech. And this female deacon stuff, like he cares about the environmental nonsense that was put in the Synod. He knew that would be there. But the female deacons, that was on the table. So he's like, oh, let's give them a chance to talk about it, to promote it. And we'll see if anything happens. Uh, he's a big, and because all these groups existed under the two previous popes. Like, people who believed in female ordination and homosexuality exist under JP2 and Pope Benedict. It's that they were kind of confined to their own circles, right? Now Francis believes everyone gets a voice. He's an Americanist almost. Like a bad Americanist, not even the better Americanist.
An Americanist Peronist.
Yeah. I don't believe in freedom of speech. Translation. I don't believe in freedom of speech.
The church doesn't either.
To quote Joseph de Maistre, freedom of speech, what fool invented such nonsense? This is what has ruined us. Close quote. He said that in his St. Petersburg dialogues. The very first thing.
I mean, of course, this is something I used to promote too, right? But I just realized it completely doesn't make sense. So no, I don't. I think you, I think you get a lot of that right. I mean, my only thing is maybe it's just my cynicism. It's not that I think I do agree with you. I don't think Francis really cares about female deacons or women priests, priestesses, whatever. I do think he cares about power, but there's a part of me that wonders, at least in terms of like what the end game is or how he may be being manipulated by kind of outside forces, be they, I don't know, Freemasons or Satan or both.
Or George Soros and Jeffrey Sachs.
Or whatever. All these bad actors. Yeah, who are, of course, like in bed with the Vatican.
Like globalist population control. Like very 100%. Sketchy people.
And this is, these are all confirmed, easily, understood things, right? These guys really do come to the Vatican and talk. It's not a conspiracy theory. But in any case, it just makes me wonder about if he knows that these things are the sorts of things that damage the faith in a very real way, and that a way that's hard to put back together. Something like, ordaining women priests. I fear that in 20 years somebody will attempt this, right? Whether it's Francis or Francis too. And it's not because they care about it. Well, that's the thing. It's not because they care about it, but it puts you in this kind of state of, and for me, of course, it's just a constant kind of reminder to, I don't want to get the platitude of, just trust Christ, whatever. But what I do say and try and hammer home for myself is to look to Calvary and remember how hard it was to believe that Christ was truly God on the cross, and that the church may come to that point where we really are like, I can't see the body of Christ right now. In the sense that it's so disfigured by these, malicious errors. But, that's the thing fundamentally that makes me wonder if I don't focus as much on what the actual issues are. It's whether or not these issues are the kinds of things that can truly shake people's faith. And that is why I have so little patience for people who will just defend Francis on anything he says. Like, where is your compassion for people who might lose everything they believe about the world because they believe, wrongly, in my opinion, that the church has been invalidated by these errors? Well, where's your compassion for them?
And there's also the thing, and this is something I wanted to touch on. That's actually a good transition, by the way, because I think a lot of people... It was
planned. Plotted.
Because I think a lot of people who used to take the position, you don't criticize Francis, Taylor Marshall, Michael Horst, that all changed with Archbishop Vigano's letter back in August of 2018.
I remember that day well.
I remember where I was. It was a nice sunny day. I'd been back from Ukraine for about 4 or 5 days, and I'm going through Twitter, and I saw it on Rod Dreyer's Twitter, and then he said something like, wow, if this is true, the Pope should resign. I'm waiting... Just in the neighborhood, I had ordered sushi. I got the sushi, got home, read the PDF. But when that happened, a lot of people just said, enough. Like there's that tweet from Taylor Marshall. It's my favorite tweet in the history of Twitter.
Is it Rorate?
Yes, Rorate.
Is it the one I remember. And I remember that day so well. What did he say? Like, I'm sorry, guys, you were right, kind of thing.
Yeah. And then they're like,
very humble.
We accept your apology, let's fix our church now. And now, there's people that have remained stubborn, but I think a lot of people have said, we had enough, we want our church back. Now, Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I just had my own that day of story, but go ahead.
So I think what Archbishop Vigano did, yeah, I know that thing because you were in Ireland and you yelled at the Pope, right?
I literally had the day of my first time as a new Catholic a few months in. The first day I happened to see the Pope is the morning I hear at 5 in the morning that this has come out. And it ended with me crying and yelling at the Pope. And being there's a picture of me feeling very sad. I can almost laugh at it now. It just feels like, wow, how much worse things have gotten since then. But no, you're right. I do think there was something real about Vigano that was and this is what we all need to realize, right? When we all are trying to be obedient, trying to be this and that everybody has a red line on some of this stuff, right? And we need to be thinking ahead a little bit and be spiritually prepared for that. I think that a lot of people just kind of want to bury their heads in the sand and say, well, he can't do that because it's never happened before. And I look at Francis and I go, I don't know. I didn't think he could do a lot of things he's done.
Well, hey, Stephanie, do you think maybe you could take a minute and share the story about Ireland on that day? Because you told me before, but I like everyone to hear it if you're comfortable.
More in depth. Oh yeah, I don't care. It's on the internet somewhere.
Okay.
So I was in Ireland with my friend Bree Dale, who some of you on Twitter may know, and Catalina Ramos, and they're both good Catholic journalists. And we were at we were covering the kind of alternative conference to the World Meeting of Families, featuring, our friend Father James Martin. We were at the Lumen Fide Institute conference, but we did have press passes for a couple of the events, and one of those events was the papal kind of address and the Angelus prayer at the Shrine for Our Lady of Knock. So we go there, we drive out from Dublin super early in the morning, it's like 5 a.m., and this Vigano letter drops right then. So we get there and we want to make him address this. So we're standing in the press area with all these Irish local journalists, in the pouring rain. We have our rosaries and such, and we're just praying, waiting for the Pope, and then he gets off the plane, and he doesn't address anything. Then he drives by in his little Pope-mobile, and basically we kind of yelled at him about Vigano, and it kind of ended with me having to, let's just say that a couple of days later it was, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I swore at the Holy Father to his face in public, in a crowd of people. Not my best moment. I was not happy. It was a very painful moment for me as a new Catholic. I knew it was coming. I knew going into the church that it was bad, but it was, I don't know. I just seeing that was the moment that I think if there was a couple months of blessed kind of fresh Catholic innocence, I think that went out the window. And you know what? And then his address, he said something. He talked about how we need to be nicer to Muslims or something. He completely ignored Vigano, which just, of course, infuriated me all the more. But that's where I was when it happened.
Yeah, no, and a point I was trying to make a bit earlier. Thank you so much for sharing.
A while ago. Sorry.
No, oh no, I told you to share.
Rabbit hole.
All right. Well, no, it's about Vigano. As soon as Vigano published his letter, it seemed like during JP2 and Francis, the modernists were just going small bit by small bit by small bit.
Right.
And that includes under Pope Francis too. JP2, Benedict, Francis, small bit.
Right.
And then Vigano just blows this whole thing up. That was a declaration of war, in my opinion. And since then, it's like, like all the modernists, like Bishop Krautler and all these people, it's like, oh no, he's given away our position. We got to speed it up. So in the last 18 months or so since the Vigano letter, 18 months or 13 months, they've been accelerating the agenda. And that's what this Amazon Synod, it's like, whoa, we better get to this female ordination stuff quickly.
This is our chance. I think it's true. on so many, so many things. It just reminds me of more generally in the church. Like, I don't know if how much credence you put to the kind of private revelation or, the experience that Pope Leo the 13th had with Satan that kind of prompted the St. Michael the Archangel prayer. I don't know. I mean, I know there's some debate on that about whether it's legit or isn't, but you have to say there is something that wouldn't be that surprising about the idea of Satan having some level of power in the Catholic Church for 100 years when you look at what happened since that time. I just think that there is some truth to this idea that, when these kind of evil forces are at work, that sometimes when it's actually nearing their downfall, things really accelerate, right? There's this kind of panic, this kind of grip, and I think that something that's been very good for the modernists in the church, especially under JP2 and Benedict, is that they were able to inch by inch and, just change the Catholic consciousness in this very small way where people weren't even realizing they're believing heresy anymore, right? There are these people following some of these innovations. I mean, goodness, they're not willfully thinking that this is something that defies what the church has always taught, because it's a slow frog boil. And now when they see the courage of the tiny remnant of bishops and priests and faithful who stood up and said, you know what, enough is enough, anathema, this has to stop. Maybe that is their kind of thing, is they're realizing, oh, we gotta just push for everything. We need to go in all guns blazing, because people are waking up to us. People are wising up, and they might even discover tradition and realize they've been believing condemned propositions this entire time.
And something that a lot of people don't know, like, for example, if you were to take someone who's 80 years old, not in the church, but in secular society,
right,
and you ask them about their views, they're going to have more traditional views, maybe backward compared to like a 20-year-old, right? A 20-year-old's up hip and with all the trends believes in that sodomy's a good thing and all this stuff. But if you taught someone who's 80, they will think it's horrible. Now, have you noticed in the church it's the exact opposite? All the ones who are 80 are rank liberals. Now, keep in mind, people who are 80 in secular life are retired now. They've retired at 65. But no, in the church, they're just reaching the top positions. They're becoming cardinals. They're becoming people who get invited to synods. So I think they also realize their days are numbered. Like, people like Bishop Krautler, he's 80 years old. If you find the bishops who are like 40 or 50, the new bishops, or the young priests in the seminary, apparently in the States, like, all the priests in the seminary now are like listening to Taylor Marshall and stuff like that. It's good days ahead, but we just have to hold these people off until they expire.
That sounds awful, but I think about this. I think, what is this? Well, it's the same way, really, I feel about the way that we're going to take back the broader culture, and it's kind of just a biological solution in the sense that, people are going to have children or they won't, and the people who are not going to have children are the people who hate children and believe that abortion is great, and, fornication is great, and pornography is great. The people that are going to have children are going to be generally more conservative people, especially Catholics. Mm-hmm. And that needs to be true. And this kind of goes the same within the church, right? I do think you're right. Generally, I'm always just pleasantly thrilled when I talk to somebody in their 60s who's just normal and believes in the faith, It's this total idea that, when I tell people I go to the traditional Latin Mass, when I happen into conversation with a kind of normal Catholic, and they'll be like, oh, really? You do? Like, they just kind of assume it's all old people. And it's like, no, it's not the case. I do think that I don't want to be too optimistic, because the problem I have with the idea of the seminarians are all being trotted out now, they're all watching Taylor Marshall, is that I still think things are so deeply ingrained with modernism that I think that it's going to take longer than a generation or two to fix it.
No, that's true. That's true.
But the trajectory is what counts in a lot of ways, though, and I think you're right about the general trend. I hope and pray.
This crisis in the church has not happened overnight, and it's not going to be fixed overnight. It's going to take several decades to fix. I heard Taylor Marshall say that things will turn around in about 10 years, and that's probably when these older bishops like Krautler and all these heretics will probably die off, and then the more sober-minded ones. Because if you take a look at the States, the young bishops, they are pretty hardcore. Like for example, you had the Archbishop of Indianapolis. He standing up. He told those Jesuits they had to they couldn't call themselves Catholic
Stop
anymore.
with calling themselves a Catholic school.
But again, that's the Archbishop of Indianapolis. The Archbishop of Washington D.C. and New York are still modernists. The Archbishop of L.A. is good, but you got to get all those archdioceses on the eastern coast, Chicago.
Who's the Archbishop of L.A.? Barron?
No, that's Gomez.
Oh, Gomez, right.
Yeah.
I know, I saw when you keep talking about this. But I think, again, there's a part of me that's cynical. It's just like, well, ultimately, most of these bishops are still, kind of, they aren't going to condemn these things. But on the other hand, my big fear is that I don't want to have the new generation of the new evangelization bishops and just have a bunch of bishop barons walking around who still will not ultimately deal with the problem.
No,
on the other hand, they are an improvement over the just utter lunatics, like you said, like Krautler and Casper and like all these guys. Like, they're just so the level of crazy, especially. That's also in Germany, so Lord help them with over there. I'm not sure what's exactly going to be going on with them, but
Mueller's not bad.
Yeah, it's true. No, he's not.
If you saw that interview on EWTN, I really hope Mueller,
Right.
Cardinal Burke, or Cardinal Sarah becomes the next pope, because
I still think Schneider would be the best pope, but I don't think it's likely. Seeing he's not even a cardinal.
Well, he's not a cardinal yet. He's not even
he's
an auxiliary bishop.
Yeah.
The archbishop he's under, Thomas Peta, is pretty good, but he's not a cardinal either. I don't think there are any cardinals in Kazakhstan has the best Catholic bishops in the world. Of that document,
which is so funny. I love it.
I know, it's
Kazakhstan.
Like most people there are either Muslim or Eastern Orthodox. Like it's like 1 or 2% Catholic, but 3 out of the 5 bishops who came out with that traditional statement of faith were from Kazakhstan. 3 out of 5.
I know.
From Kazakhstan.
That's amazing. Well, it just reminds me of, this idea of who God uses. It's just so funny to me. I saw a picture today on Twitter just saying that a picture of, I forget what the quote was, but just a picture of Donald Trump and Kanye West. Two of these people, Trump, who is obviously not very great of a Christian, obviously, but has, has said some good things on abortion, has normalized some social conservative beliefs. Like, there have been some good things that have come, at least in the climate he has helped to annoy the liberals into creating. Kanye West, I'm pretty skeptical in terms of how much is a marketing ploy, how much is genuine. I don't like his use of surrogates to have children. But the fact that you have a mainstream rap star, singing about how Jesus is the king, I can't really condemn that. And then I find it just a little bit funny that we have, basically the bishop coming out of, the land of Borat, being this total one of the only because I kind of have a middling view on some of these bishops who are generally good, like Mueller and some of these others, that I can accept that they are generally decent, but I do think there are these modernist tendencies that are going to take more than one generation to get out of them.
Yeah,
Schneider, I don't really feel that way about. I think he's very, very, very solid, and I think that I generally, have a lot of trust for what he says. And the fact that guy is the guy coming out of Kazakhstan is just hilarious. It's just the least prestigious thing you could possibly think to do. And he's, Athanasius. Come on. It's just so poetic. It's hilarious.
Yeah, no, he's good. He's the best bishop in the church probably, and
I would say Kazakhstan.
He's the auxiliary bishop of Astana in Kazakhstan. So, God bless you. We wish you the best, and we wish the best for all the solid bishops and priests who are fighting for the faith. So
yeah.
It's today is October 31st, also known as Reformation Day, and today Protestants around the world, hundreds of millions of Protestants. Well, I don't think hundreds of millions of them, but a lot of them are celebrating. I'm sure James White and a few others are celebrating Reformation Day, which is the anniversary of Martin Luther nailing the 95 Thesis to the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I think it's a very tragic thing to celebrate. Obviously, like any Catholic should really think, and I mean, like any Catholic, I say, as the Vatican puts a bust of Martin Luther somewhere in there, and the stamp and all the rest of it. But it's a fundamentally a sad day, because it's really a celebration of. I don't even like the term Reformation. I think it's more of a revolt. Nothing was reformed. It was a purposeful break. And, I just tell people to, look at Luther himself. I mean, the man, it's hard for me to even be gleeful about his probable eternity in hell. The guy was, just this scrupulous, twisted individual who talked about poop a lot and, just not even just be gross. He really did. And, clearly couldn't maintain his faith, right? And he's somebody who was losing his faith and who did witness some real, bad actions on the part of men in the Catholic Church. I don't think anybody disputes that. But the idea that the solution to this was to craft a new religion, which is it's the definition of the traditions of men, and I find it sad that people don't see it, and I find it sad that they're the ultimate sola upon which rests all others, the Bible alone, is defied by the guy who invented it in the first place, who removed scripture he didn't like, who altered scripture he didn't like. It's just not a happy Reformation Day for me.
There's a thing I like to say, sola scriptura, unless I don't like the scriptura. That was Martin Luther.
Yeah, it's true. It's exactly him.
My, as you probably know, I have a German last name. My grandparents died as practicing Lutherans. My dad is a non-practicing Lutheran to this day. I get my Catholic from my Ukrainian mother. And thank God I got that, I would have hated to be a Lutheran. But, but...
Well, we can try it with Pope Francis any day now.
But no, just that I don't know, if you go back and read my blog from when I started out, like I was very anti-Protestant, and now I just kind of want... I do acknowledge that a lot of them love Jesus Christ and they have deep respect for the scriptures, and it's like I really wish we were together. I wish, I've got about 8 Protestants that are on my regular prayer list.
Right.
About half of them
I have quite a few myself.
Are former Catholics. Half of them have never been Catholic. Some are hostile, like they think I'm going to hell. Some think I'm a brother in Christ. I still want them to be
right
Catholic, and just I don't know, I've seen so many strong. I mean, I do think 500 years ago, a lot of Europeans made a mistake, and I want them to come home.
Yeah, I feel that way too. I have a real, look, I do think there's this tendency to just kind of lord it over and be like, oh, we have the truth, so therefore let's bash everybody else, and I think there's always a line to walk, right, between, clarity and charity, I guess, right, that we can be honest about wanting people to become Catholic for very real and good reasons while still being, charitable towards them, and... that's to me is why I haven't even really commented a lot on this Reformation Day thing on social media today or anything, because I'm tired by it, and it's hard for me to celebrate I do see the usual jokes, for everybody, the Catholic jokes about Protestants, Reformation Day, about they're going to hell and this, that, and the other. I say I am sad about Martin Luther's, probable fate of his soul, because I see in him a person who lost their faith and chose evil ways to deal with that fact, who chose evil ways to deal with the kind of clear kind of crisis he was in. So I feel sad about that. If I feel sad about Martin Luther, who did some pretty horrific things, not just destroy, splitting the church, causing just, probable loss of millions of souls, but just all the things he did even in his own life. And if I feel bad for him, I certainly have a level of compassion and love for the average Protestant who loves Jesus Christ, who wants to follow the Bible, who, frankly, is more Catholic than the Pope in a lot of ways. I think that maybe is one good thing about the crisis, is that it's given, I think, a lot of people a new sense of humility and love, and
And the thing
it's
is,
something.
for example, apparently they talk about how in the Amazon region Pentecostalism is growing. They
Right.
talked about this, and I'm thinking, well, if the kind of Catholicism these people are exposed to is that of Bishop Erwin Krautler, then from a human perspective alone, I can see why these people are leaving. If
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
only thing they've been exposed to, I don't blame them at all. It's so painful hearing Catholics who've left, and they say, yeah, the priest said the Bible isn't really the word of God. It's just really a bunch of nice stuff under
I know,
cover.
it's
And I'm like, okay,
disturbing.
that's not what we teach. But I just, I just feel so bad. Our bad clergy is destroying the faith. I read this biography. There was a girl on Twitter who was a convert from evangelicalism in England who recommended to me this book, St. Margaret Clitheroe. And the Catholics, like, the Catholics almost won in England. Queen Elizabeth had to be like the kind of Joseph Stalin of her day. Because there were so many devout Catholics. And
Right.
the thing is, if you put hardcore true Catholics in uh, against pretty much any kind of Protestantism, we're going to win all the time. In the Amazon, it's bad Catholicism versus bad Protestantism. That's what it is.
Well, really, yeah, it is, and it's that's the thing, and that's what's so dangerous about this crisis in a way that is just because I'm just getting very tired of the whole, well, it's been bad before. There's something in that this crisis, the modernist crisis, right, broadly speaking, say 100 years of it, is that it's taken good Catholics as a group and made them all into bad Catholics. Humanly speaking, the majority are in this state where they don't know the faith, they don't know what they believe, and you're right. This is what drives the world away, because if you want a religion that tells you to just affirms you in your sin, doesn't challenge you, it doesn't hold you to the hard truths of Scripture, you can find that anywhere, and you're not going to be compelled to join the Catholic faith.
You can find that,
and and if you want a religion.
Well, I was going to say, you can find that if you go to the cathedral in Bishop Krautler's diocese.
Yeah, well, exactly, right, and that's why no one's going. They don't care. And if you want the fun music and the Jesus is my best friend stuff, then you can find it much better in a lot of Protestant denominations. Yeah. Sorry, we don't do it the best of anybody. These kind of charismatic styling in these new evangelization movements. Ultimately we're not cutting it with the Protestants, because we're trying to compete with a religion that isn't on the playing field of a religion that's not our own, and that's going to fail.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's dark.
Yeah, so I mean, I do have a love for them, including the ones there's this Protestant on Twitter who is extremely anti-Catholic. I'll tell you who it is later.
Right.
But I
okay.
want I keep saying to myself, that would be just so perfect if she came home.
Oh, amen. I love that.
Yeah,
love those stories.
And, one day, Lord willing, I've got my prayer list. There's about 8 Protestants there. There's a couple people in it elsewhere on there, and obviously a few Muslims, but, things don't happen overnight. I believe God is good, and God's going to help us out. The most we can do, as bad as Pope Francis or even Bishop Krautler, as bad as they are, they can't take away my faith. They can't take away your faith.
No, and I have to keep, like I said, it's this is something that having the chance to talk about my own conversion recently was a big help to me in a way I didn't expect, because it just reminded me of the grace that God has given me when I feel like things are difficult and like I don't even know where to turn sometimes, because there are certain matters in which I'm like, I don't have the answer. Maybe we'll deal with this with the council in 200 years because I just don't have an answer for you. And being able to look at my own life, my own conversion, and in how many ways it truly was, miraculous in a lot of ways. Because I can believe that if God can do that for me, I know a lot of Protestant friends who are a much better person than I was, and I don't really doubt that God is a good God and can do that same thing for them, and I just have to keep trusting that, and like I said, keep looking to the cross, and offer those sufferings for those conversions, and we never know what God will do with one of those people, and it's sometimes the stubborn ones you just love praying for. I remember somebody prayed for me, and I always think about this. I think, you know what? I wonder if we'll find out someday in heaven, Lord willing, how this all played out. That somebody said that they had seen me when I was secular on Twitter, and I was just doing my political commentary and this, that, and I said that I wanted to know what the truth was, and I wanted to, if God wanted me to know what to, if God wanted me, he needed to tell me what to do and where to go. And this person who was a Catholic, they just said a quick prayer for me, just a quick Hail Mary or something. And then they emailed me months later, and they say after I converted, and just the email that this guy was like, I'm in tears. He's like, because I just said a prayer for you. I saw it. I saw you were hurting, and I didn't think it was possible in a million years. You were way too far from it, and just he said that, I realized that God really does answer, and then I see that you're just on fire for God and you're converting, and that we need to have that and have that trust that can happen for the people we pray for as well. And sometimes I struggle to remember as often as I've seen it.
Yeah, no, there's just one girl I know. She's evangelical. I know her. Saw her a couple months ago. I just texted her today actually, but I'm just, she's grown up believing all these myths about Jesuits and stuff, and believe me, there's no shortage of criticisms of the Jesuits, but
I was gonna say, I mean,
yeah, no, but like I'm just hoping, one day, just very good soul, just such a good soul, such a holy person, and Lord willing, God is good. That's all I'll say. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I wish everyone a happy All Saints Day tomorrow.
Yes.
And
pray for the Holy Souls this month.
Amen. All right.
Please.
All right. Goodbye, and God bless.